to you, very well known, a famous speaker in Japan, and a human rights activist and lawyer. But first I want to introduce someone else. And his name is Tomohiro. And he suffered just like you. In about the year 2000, he was sitting in the same seat that you are sitting right now. And he was suffering through ELA lectures every week. I don't know if he fell asleep or not, okay? He wouldn't tell me the truth, but this is Tomohiro Ioguchi. And after Tomo graduated from ICU, he worked for the Japanese State Department. I think you know the Kokumusho in Israel and in the United States. He worked in communications. And he worked, and several years ago, he joined Human Rights Watch. And so he is one of our ICU graduates who went through exactly what you are going through right now. So, how about a hand for Tomohiro, okay? Kanae Doi probably doesn't need an introduction, so I'll keep this very short. She is the Japan Director of Human Rights Watch. I think you know Human Rights Watch is active in many, many countries around the world, trying to protect the rights of all kinds of people. Kanae-san in Japan especially works to encourage the Japanese government to prioritize human rights in its foreign policy and in its practices. I think maybe you have seen her on TV, or you might have read articles by her in the newspaper. Before she joined Human Rights Watch in 2006, she was an attorney, a human rights attorney. An attorney is a lawyer, and she practiced here in Tokyo, and she specialized in refugee law, immigration law, constitutional law, and criminal defense. She received her law degree from the University of Tokyo and a degree in international relations from the law school at New York University. After today's talk, if you want to learn more, I suggest you go to Google and type in her name and type in Human Rights Watch, and you can watch TED Talks and other YouTube videos that go into other aspects. So please join me in welcoming Kanae today.
Thank you, Paul. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to talk to ICU students. My name is Kanae Doi, as introduced. I am the director of Human Rights Watch. And it's already almost 20 years ago, which is unbelievable, that I graduated from college in Tokyo. Sure. Oh, sure. This is in
Maybe.
Okay. May I use that microphone instead?
Yeah.
Okay, no problems. Sorry. So, this scene reminded me of the days as a college student, and it was at that point when I started my career as a human rights activist. When I was a college student, I went to Africa, at that point the newest nation in Africa, which is now called Eritrea, as a one-year volunteer to help them write their new laws, because they got independence from Ethiopia just 4 years ago. Since then, I've been interested in the fields of human rights protection, and even after I became a practicing attorney, I defended the rights of refugees or undocumented migrant workers in Japan. And 6 years ago, I was very lucky to join this organization called Human Rights Watch, which is one of the largest human rights organization in the world. So it is my great pleasure to introduce my organization as well as emerging human rights issues in the 21st century. In fact, I have only 1 hour to go, and then I have a lot to talk to you. So in this 1 hour, I would like to present you what kind of challenges we face as human rights organization in the 21st century, and with the use of a video which describes our work, as well as I would highlight one of those emerging challenges, which is in fact attacks against schools, which is a very important and very important issue, yet very much neglected in the past. So I would like to focus on this issue in the latter half of this lecture, and then I would like to, in fact, ask you to have a discussion within the small groups to discuss, if you are a human rights activist, if you're leading a human rights organization, what is your plan of campaign to address this problem? Attacks, global phenomenon of attacks against schools. So when you listen to my presentation, you don't just passively listen to me, but think actively how you would apply my kind of theory of change into your discussion today. So I will anyway ask you to discuss your plan of campaign, and later on I would ask some of you to present your campaign plan, and at the end I would give you an opportunity to, in fact, join our real campaign to stop attacks against schools. Because whenever I do this kind of lectures, I would get the questions, what can I do? So at the end, I would give you that particular opportunities as well. So anyway, it is obviously a challenge for me to do this in one hour. So let me begin just, straight into this speech. So welcome to Human Rights Watch. In a very nutshell, I want to tell you what we are doing as well as how we work, so that to help you in your discussion to build up your campaign to challenge, to address the human rights problems. So what are human rights? I think that it is not necessary for you to really listen to me what human rights are, but just in case, those rights and freedoms to which all human rights are entitled, regardless of their sex, national or ethnic origin, nationality, race, religion, or language. So there are a lot of important rights, such as right to life, right to liberty, right to security, protection from discrimination, arbitrary arrest and detention, and so on. And Human Rights Watch works in 90 countries. We have 400 plus staff members from 64 with 64 nationalities, and we publish 150 reports per year, meaning that we publish one report every 2 or 3 days. We are around for around 30 years, and then you may know that we were awarded Nobel Peace Prize in 1997. And then these are the, in fact, areas we focus on. That is because these are the challenges we face in the 21st century. On each topics I can go on talking for 30 minutes, but first I would like to focus on international justice, and then I would like to show a video too on this issue. International justice is a very important and a very new area where human rights organization has been working in the past 10 or 20 years. You may know that in Japan, if you murder someone, you would know that you would face justice. But once you're in the international community, if you kill 100 people, or even if you kill 10,000 people, if you are a ruler, if you have a power, you wouldn't face justice. You would enjoy your life, until you die for natural causes. That was reality in the 20th century. So we wanted to change that. So knowing that the domestic justice system doesn't work for rulers who commit atrocities, human rights organization pushed to build international justice system where anyone, including the head of states, cannot escape from justice. That is the international justice system. So please watch a video, which is a very short one, 10 minutes, which not only describes what international justice actually means, but also describes our Human Rights Watch work.
Count 4, rape. Count 5, sexual slavery. for the rigor of our investigations. We collect evidence in a way that simply cannot be refuted. It provides an airtight case for prosecution.
We speak to hundreds of witnesses and victims. We visit hospitals, morgues, where you can get a lot of information about the nature of injuries and cause of death. We visit the scene of the crime. What is that? Is it from the bomb? To take photographs to analyze the damage, and then we have a team of military experts who can tell you exactly what type of weapon shot that type of shell. We also use satellite imagery, and putting it together with the witness testimonies, we'll have a very full picture of what happened. To get a full story about what's happening in northern Syria, where the attacks against civilian population were just horrendous, we had to go in. After trying to push the Syrian government to let us in for many, many months, we finally decided to go in unofficially. We heard reports about executions that happened in Idlib province, one of the opposition strongholds. Syrian troops would enter the house, they would separate men from women, and then line them against the wall and shoot them dead, one after another, one after another. We talked to a mother whose 3 sons were basically taken out of the house one morning, and a few hours later, she found their bodies in the street right outside of her house. In 5 different towns in northern Idlib, we documented executions, arbitrary detention and torture, and destruction and burning of civilian property, war crimes committed by the Syrian army.
Human Rights Watch says there is clear evidence that Syria has breached international law. We were in northern Syria and all the leads pointed to a massive campaign of violence by Syrian government forces and pro-government militias.
What's absolutely clear from this report is that torture is widespread and systematic.
Human Rights Watch maps out dozens of detention facilities where prisoners say they've been routinely tortured.
Human Rights Watch put out a similar report much earlier than the UN report. How do you do the actual evidence gathering?
We've been working in Syria for years, so we have an extensive network of activists, human rights activists, who we know personally.
Once we have the evidence that atrocities are committed, our aim is not simply to expose the information. Our aim is to generate the political pressure to stop the killing, and at the very least, to bring the perpetrators to justice.
And now from Oslo by Jan Egeland from Human Rights Watch. Jan Egeland, your words are very strong. You urge the UN Security Council to revoke Assad's license to kill. And in fact, you're saying that the Security Council has given Assad a license to kill.
One of the problems is really that Assad feels that there is no unified pressure on him, that he's still being sold arms even.
The international community has a responsibility to protect the Syrian people. And frankly, right now, the problem is not what we call the international community. Right now, the problem is that Russia and China in the UN Security Council have been blocking significant action for months and months.
The only thing that is going to convince the international community, the Security Council, to put pressure on the Syrian government to end the violations is to report the truth, to get the facts out.
We're really putting them on notice that somebody will have to answer for these violations.
Violations that the Syrian government routinely denies, but the evidence being gathered in reports like this one by Human Rights Watch is
to that day when the dust finally settles in Syria. A day when many hope those accused of crimes against humanity will be brought to justice before an international court of law.
Speaking to us is an act of incredible courage. One may say that these people have nothing to lose. They lost everything they have, and that's why they're willing to tell their story. But that's not true. People always have something to lose, including their own lives and their own freedom. But they understand that we are this link between their story and justice. And one of the most important things that is left for them is the hope for justice.
Thank you so much. So I know that you are aware that from 2002, ICC, International Criminal Court in The Hague, the Netherlands has started to work, and now in the 21st century, it is even for the heads of state, if they commit any atrocities, it is possible for them to be brought to justice. So the paradigm has significantly changed from the 20th century to the 21st century. And we have a lot of challenges related to arms. For example, Human Rights Watch was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for their work of leading the treaty against landmines. But not only the landmines, but we have been working on, for example, a treaty against cluster munitions, and then these days we're working on a treaty to ban a fully autonomous lethal weapons, which you have heard about. You may have heard about killer robots, and then of course we have a lot of human rights challenges done by big multinational corporations, by big businesses. Of course, we have a lot of challenges related to children's rights, and today we would discuss particularly on the rights of students related to the rights to education. So this issue I will talk in detail later. And of course, counterterrorism or terrorism itself is also a big issue in the 21st century. I don't have to talk about, I think, torture, which has been a significant issue, in particular in the course of the discussion about the policies on counterterrorism. And then, of course, I talked a little bit about my background as an attorney to defend the rights of migrants, but of course, migration is a very big issue in the 21st century. LGBT rights, of course, is a very big issue. In particular, at the Sochi Olympics, you have seen that the anti-gay movements in Russia were under fire, and then lots of Western leaders boycotted the opening ceremony of the Sochi Olympics because of, in order to appeal to the world that the LGBT rights are human rights, and then and so on and so on. So I can talk about. I can go on talking for 2 hours, by looking at this slide. But in order to save time, I have to leave. But if you have any questions, you can come back to me later. And you, I think, understood our approach, our theory of change by watching our video. But most important is the investigation. The solid fact is the foundation for change. And then after we investigate, we expose. We expose the facts to the international community as well as local community, so that abusers would feel the pressure that they have to stop their abuses. But we have also advocates like myself in key governments, in key capitals around the world, and then we advocates recommend theory of change to the respective governments, and then we generate long-term pressure in order to make real impact. So this investigation, expose, and change is our theory of change, and then I would ask you later to apply this theory of change into your campaign. So here I would like to change my subject a little bit. I would like to focus more on a specific issue, which is the rights of the child as well as rights to education. So you may have heard about Malala Yousafzai. She was, people thought that she would get the Nobel Peace Prize for the last year, but she missed. She is a girl student who advocated for the girls' education in Pakistan, and then she was shot by Pakistan Taliban. As this incident shows, and then unfortunately this is not an isolated case. There are lots of girls who are attacked for just asking for education, as well as there are lots of incidents of school attacks and teachers attacks. So we Human Rights Watch has been leading an initiative to end school attacks from 2010. And then we have done a lot of extensive researches around the world to find and expose how much, extensive the school attacks are in the world, as well as we worked with the UN Security Council members to pass a resolution which would ask the member countries of the United Nations to stop school attacks, as well as to protect education. So that's what we have been doing so far. But we thought that it is very important to stop the military use of schools and other educational institutions, because we found that this phenomenon is the cause of counterattacks by enemy forces when a school is occupied and used by army forces. Enemy forces would find it as a military objectives and then counterfire against those institutions. So let me tell you a bit more in detail about what actually military use means. So this is a partial occupation of as barracks, base, outpost. And it is not only partial use, but we often find a complete occupation as barracks, base, outpost. This is a situation of Iraq, where Iraqi soldiers are in fact sleeping in a school. And we often also find schools used as a firing position or an observation point for target locations, target identification, and fire control. This is the situation where our researchers found in Yemen, close to the capital Sana'a, as well as schools and universities are often used as training ground. This is the situation of Libya, where rebel fighters are using schools as training ground. And then weapons and ammunitions are often are hidden in those school facilities. And this is a incident in Iraq where 6 students were among 8 killed when an ammunition dump exploded in Abu Dahal primary school in Sarol city. And the schools often used for detention and interrogation centers as well. This is the situation of Libya, where schoolboys are in fact interrogated as detainees now. So how prevalent these situations are? You can see that the schools are used as schools are used militarily in Colombia, in many African countries, in many Asian countries such as Nepal, Burma, Thailand, the Philippines, Sri Lanka, India. So in fact, in Asia, a lot of schools are used for military purposes. And then, for example, in Thailand, southern Thailand, in 2010, 79 schools were occupied, and then 20,000 students could not have access to education. In Southern Sudan, 2011, 21 schools were used for military purposes, and then more than 100,000 students did not have access to education. In India, 2010, more than 100 schools were used for military purposes, and more than 20 students could not get education for that reason. And then that is almost the situation in Afghanistan too. So you can tell that this is not an isolated incident, but this is a global phenomenon. So, and then what is the consequence of the use of schools for military purposes? One is that, of course, students and teachers are under fire. So this is the picture from schools in Yemen, and then you can see that the students are here, and then on the above you can see the shields where military personnel are protected, yet those students have nothing to protect them. And then you can see the bullet marks. So this buildings was in fact under fire. And then in these situations, teachers and students can be hurt. And then it's not only the kind of violence you can foresee from military occupation, but particularly girls are exposed to physical and sexual violence. This is a picture from Thailand where paramilitary ranger with groceries works by students at one elementary school in southern Thailand. So in a society where girls are under pressure not to go to school, when those young soldiers are living in fact in schools or in universities, the parents or the society of those girls get more reluctant to send their kids or girls to schools. And then it is not only during the occupation, but risks remain after occupation too. This is the situation. This is the situation I believe in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where a military has left, but yet they dumped their ammunitions into the toilet, in fact. So now toilet is the landmine fields, and then children cannot have access to the toilet, as well as the school has changed into a landmine field, so very dangerous for children to study. And then the military use of schools not only is a cause of death or injury for students and teachers, but also it endangers education itself. So it is a cause of lower attendance, it is a cause of dropping out, it is a cause of lower enrollment, lower transition, and then of course, as I explained earlier, gender disparity is caused by the military use or the lower quality of education. So it endangers not only the security of students and teachers, but also endangers education itself. So here I would like to ask you to make a pair, in fact, and then discuss your strategy. I mean, if you are a human rights activist in Japan, or you are leading a human rights organization in Japan, what kind of campaign are you going to lead in order to address this global phenomenon of military use of schools? And then I would give you about 10 minutes. So you have already learned about the theory of change of human rights organizations. So start discussion. For example, in this block, このブロックではこっちから1人目と2人目の人がペアを作って、この、学校の軍事使用の問題を止めるためにもし、皆さんが私の立場にいたら、どんなキャンペーンを作るかをちょっと話し合ってもらいたいんですね。 で、こっちのここから、1人目と2人目の人がペアになってください。で10分しかないので、真ん中に残った人はもう一つそこで、グループを作る。こっちもまた同じように、こっちから2人、こっちから2人、残った人たちが2人のペアで、万が一真ん中に残った人が1人しかいなかったらば、こっち側、みんなから見て右側のチームに入る3人になります。So, we have, of course, ICU graduate Tomo to help you. So Tomo is going to help you for this block of people. And then we have 2 student interns from Human Rights Watch. So Hirochika will help that block over there. And the Yuta is going to help this block. So if you have any questions, you can of course ask me. But they are around, so you can ask any questions. How to be discussion as well as what is in fact the military use of schools and so on. いいですか？45分まで時間があります。ただ差はするだけだけど、2人のチームがどっちに出るかみたいな。Time is up. Time is up. So I invited 4 students who has come up with really nice plans, I think. So I would ask them to present their plans. So attention, please. 日本語でも英語でも、はい、よろしくお願いします。じゃあ私が持っていただきましょう。はい。
スローガンは Give Education to Children です。で、まずプランは性的暴力とかセクシュアルアビューズを受けている女の子たちのためにシェルターを作ることです。で、シェルターを作って守ることがまず1つ目で、2つ目にそのシェルターで、教育とともにその後社会で、自立できるようにジョブスキルも与えるってことと、あと書いてないんですけど、付け足しでその子たちの心理的な障害っていうか、をケアするためにカウンセリングセンターなどを設置するっていうのがあります。
ワンダフル、ありがとうございます。ちゃんと英語で書いてあります。ちなみに To help girls prevent physical and sexual violence, they first might make shelters to protect the girls from the violence. 2番目が Give education at the shelter to empower them in society. 完璧ですね。ありがとうございます。書いてなくて。はい、ありがとうございます。So I was invited second group. はい、お願いします。
私たちが提案したいのは軍の教育現場からの隔離です。それがメインテーマですね。でそのために以下の4つの方法を提示したいと思います。
まず1つ目はエージェンシーを作るっていうもので、ミリタリー軍が学校とか教室を使っているかっていうことを実際に現地に行って調べるというエージェンシーを作るのがまず第一だと思いました。
でその次にその調査結果が上がったところでまず、本格的に動き出すわけなんですけど、できればミリタリーとエデュケーションとかできればというかミリタリーと教育現場を話す、その方法として、優先的に行われるべきなのはまずその軍の方と交渉して軍に別の施設を使ってもらえるように頼むってことですね。でそれがその情勢的もしくは金銭的に難しい場合は少なくとも一番危険だと思われるのが軍の戦闘などに生徒が巻き込まれるということなので、生徒の安全を確保するために新しい教育現場を作るということですね。なので具体的にはその新しい教育現場を作るためのその建物の確保であるとかインフラ整備であるとかそういうものですね。
Thank you very much. ありがとうございます。Thank you so much. In fact, what Human Rights Watch actually doing is pretty close to what you have proposed. So we are, we are trying to, in fact, draft guidelines in order to make sure that militaries will not use schools as for their military purposes. ちょっとこれを復活させてもらっていい? Military purposes. So we are inviting governments around the world to join draft guidelines to stop military use of schools. And we have a detailed guidelines which I don't have any time for us to share with you at the moment, but we are trying to push those governments to be motivated to incorporate those guidelines into their practices. In order to do so, in a democratic society like Japan, we need the voice of people. I mean, if people want those guidelines to be the policy of Japan, I mean, Japanese people, if their voice is to incorporate those guidelines into the practice, they would do so. So what Human Rights Watch is actually doing is, perhaps you, thank you, you know from what you have saw on this, in fact, go案内sheet, but we have opened a Facebook page where lots of students around the world, including Japanese students, to submit a petition, which is in fact a photo, I would say face photo petition, where you would submit petition, but by photographing yourself with a slogan asking the government to stop military use of schools. So, so this is in fact what our task force, student task force, in fact he is the member of the task force, doing. We are sending our youth task force around Japan to collect those face petitions in order to put it on the Facebook, and then we show those Facebook pages to our policymakers, including diplomats as well as Diet members, to let them understand that this is the voice of the Japanese people. So today I would ask you to help us to submit your photo and slogans to our Facebook page. So in fact, our intern Hirochika would come to you to photograph you with the help of you volunteers, and then Yuta is going to help photograph you, and then Tomo is going to photograph you, and then put your photographs on the Facebook page. So 始めてください. Start. And if you don't want to be photographed, or if you don't want your photograph to be uploaded to your Facebook page, please just say no. So is there anyone whom you don't want to be put on the Facebook page? 覚えてください、自分の中で、島の中で誰が嫌か。when they photograph, they would ask you if they would ask your permission. So if you don't want, just tell them so. So so in fact, I would urge you to トモさんもう始めてくださいます。で、この学生さんたちが助けてくれるボランティアたちなので使ってください。So in fact, we have visited with those Facebook page to many Diet members, and they have reacted pretty positively these days. So the Vice Foreign Ministers of Japan, Mr. Kijima, has declared at the Diet about 3 weeks ago that Japan is going to be proactively involved in drafting these guidelines, as well as to disseminate this idea to their Asia partners. So if this guideline, which prohibits the use of schools for military purposes, if it is really put into practice, this would help tens of thousands of students to go back to their schools. So this is really going to change the situation. So this is one of the campaigns we are leading, writing and incorporating those guidelines into government's military policy, as well as passing a UN Security Council resolution, which would prohibit the militaries as well as anti-government forces to attack schools and teachers in the course of military action. So if you have any questions about this particular issue, but also if you have any questions about international justice or any other emerging human rights issues in the 21st century, I would welcome any questions from you. 何かこの学校の軍事利用ですとか、あるいは先ほどお話しさせていただいたインターナショナルジャスティスの面でもいいんですけど、質問などあれば手を挙げてください。
Students, questions?
Don't be shy.
Don't be shy.
I think Paul Sensei will allow question in Japanese too.
Japanese is okay. We are a bilingual university, right?
If you have any questions about, not only about, international justice or attacks against education, you can ask questions about counterterrorism or business by human rights abuses by business or arms against.
Okay, we have one question.
日本語で失礼します。先ほど入国を認めない国の際には、法的には違法に入国しているというふうにビデオで見たんですけれど、それは内政干渉になったりとかしないのでしょうかという疑問が出ました。
Good question. I guess the intervention into internal affairs is only possible by the government. So if the Japanese government, without the permission of their partner governments, if they invade without their permission, that is intervention into internal affairs. But I think the private individuals is just breaking the rules. That is not really their intervention into internal affairs. But of course, we risk the possibility of, for example, arrest or deportation by breaking the domestic rules. But we believe that it is more important to document abuses than abiding by those arbitrary immigration rules, so that we go into those countries unofficially, sometimes as a last resort.
Okay, students, I'm sorry, there's just a couple announcements. You all have pens. Please leave the pen right on the table in front of you. Just leave them there, right where you are. And second, you don't need a computer card today. Shima-kun and some others are collecting these. When you leave the lecture hall and go outside, please give this to the graduate students there. Now, students, also there are more chances to take a photo with your beautiful slogans. when you, can they come down here? Okay, so those of you who need to go to your next class, you can go out the back. Also, there's a cameraman in the back, in the lobby. Please take your paper and your slogan with you, and you can get a photo. Also, you can come up here. All right,
はい、
come up
私の
here.
ところに来てください。大使は